Good morning. This is the Talking Devils podcast. We are live. I'm Wayne Barton, your host, joined by Dave Murphy and Manchester United legend Paul Parker for the first podcast of the new season. Season. Seize the day. God. Starting with a bad pun. How are you doing, Paul? You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you, Wayne.
Good stuff. Devo, how you
Yep.
been?
All good. Bank holiday weekend. The sun is not out. So, yeah, all good.
Yeah, Dave, maybe washed away by an Irish storm. Do you have storm names over in Ireland? We have them over here. But yeah, you get the same storms. It's the same storms, isn't it? You know, defined by the UK.
Yeah, you live next door. So, yeah, it's roughly the same storm.
Thankfully, not exactly next door to Dave.
And this storm is like you. It's full of wind. So, you know.
Oh, there you go. Back for the new season, full of this kind of stuff. Okay. There's a lot to get through over the summer. You know, United, where we left off was the very, very desolate Europa League defeat and what that meant for United over the summer. Dave and I did a catch up a couple of weeks ago when he was over here, and we were talking about whether or not there'd been any injected optimism. I don't know if the Premier League Summer Series success has managed to warm your thoughts up a little bit, but we'll get to that. United drew 2-2 overnight with Everton to secure their position as the Premier League Summer Series champs. You might remember on earlier podcasts when I'm not taking Paul's story here, but when Paul was one of the first players to win the Premier League in 1993, they presented them with a big trophy, of course, and they allowed the trophy. It was a special presentation. They get little trophies. Very special memento for winning the Premier League. I wonder if when you win the Premier League Summer Series, you get an even smaller one, or like 1.2 points towards the overall tally. I mean, we won more games in the Summer Series than we did against those guys combined last season, which is frightening considering the caliber of opposition. But we won't be winning any trophies or points, guys. We'll win some conversation for us to have about it. Tony says, "Good morning, gents." Tony will be joining us on the podcast next week. A new show on the new pod on the rotation with Mike Pieri as well. So looking forward to that. Okay, so how to begin? We'll talk about the game last night. United 2, Everton 2. Some little passages of play that was nice to watch. And Burmo making his debut. Still working out to say that. And Bumo, it seems like the most safe way of doing it. And Burmo feels like I feel like I'll butcher that quite often. Paul, United 2, Everton 2. Some nice passages of play in the first half between Cunha and Burmo and Fernandes. A little bit of backup from Manu as well. I can't really think of much else to say apart from there was some nice. Ahmad obviously thrown in there because he was dancing around quite well. So that's kind of promising. But you know, when you see some of the same old, I don't want to get this off on so downer, but when you see some of the same old errors like Ugarte losing possession and them scoring an easy goal off the back of it, it makes you wonder. It's a lot of talk going on about the positive vibes and how things are sort of moving on. When you see the same old errors, it's like, kind of hoping that you wouldn't have seen them. But then again, some of these players will never grow out of it. You know, you can't make Ugarte into a fantastic footballer. As good as an all-round player as he is, he's not a great footballer on the ball. What did you make of what you saw of last night's game? I mean, there's the last one of the tour. Does it look like there's something there that you're thinking things are moving in the right direction?
Well, I think we have to say, if you look at it as attack going forward and you look at counter-attack, there was definitely more sharper with the two new signings. Without a shadow of a doubt, it made a difference. And they actually looked like they knew what they were doing. To be perfectly honest, that's where they looked a lot better. Ahmad seems to be better in that role and he's more consistently in the game playing in that role. He's an easier person to find, and he wants to join in and he's willing to go back. But for me, the problem is still athleticism in midfield. That's the bit they're lacking, that bit in behind. When you look at Ugarte in there, even you look at Fernandes in there as well, they're lacking somebody who's got good legs. Do you go and sign a player just because he can run? if I say yes, go and do that, then I'm a massive hypocrite. But I think when you look at the way United were last season, and then I saw the game earlier, and I look at West Ham, two teams who must have been the slowest in the Premier League last season. They definitely need more legs and energy in that midfield. So that's the main area where I look at where they need more cohesion there. I think the front works, but still needs a centre forward. Still needs that one in there for everyone to believe that things have really taken a step forward. Midfield is legs. Defensively, there's still bits there. Is that one player? Is there someone within the club who can go and make a difference there? I think it's the last place you really want to go and spend money at this moment in time, because there's a lot of players who can go and play in those areas. But as a team, and from that performance, I would have said, again, I go back to it, the attacking wise was definitely more of a threat than last season. There was more off the cuff stuff, rather than just basic and up, back, through. It was a little bit more imagination being used out there, and players just doing things rather than set systems. And that's what you want, and that's what Manchester United have always been. Yes, you do things in training. Yes, you have pattern of play, but players aren't always going to do things that help you go and do your pattern of play against them. Sometimes you have to just show a bit of initiative. And for me, that's one of the things that's lacking in football at the moment. Players don't seem to be allowed to, or they won't use their initiative.
Yeah. Well, it certainly did seem like, especially with we've talked about this before on previous pods at the back end of last season when they were looking at new systems, particularly when it was where to play Kobe in those last few weeks when we didn't have a centre forward. You could argue that we don't still have a centre forward, really, even though Højlund and Xerxes are back among the fit players. It's an interesting puzzle to put across that, United did look quite vibrant with Fernandes alongside and Mbeumo and Cunha in there, Dave. I mean, it looks, you're not playing with a recognised centre forward, but I mean, the point to Paul's point, basically what United will be looking at is a player to play alongside Fernandes, because Fernandes will drop further back. That's the way that's going to go, you would think, unless they don't get a centre forward, and then that was a trial to see how it goes. And then you're saying, you still have that problem in midfield, and you lack something of a cutting edge up front, although you would say at least from the evidence of what we know, Fernandes, Cunha and Mbeumo are all decent finishers, so we don't have a problem with that. And Amad, of course, can be included in that. What did you make of last night? I mean, you've not been on the fence with Amorim over the summer, or previous to that either. What have you seen over the summer that's making you feel like, when we were talking, it was probably just before we started playing preseason games. So have we seen anything from the preseason that you're now thinking, all right, it's not the greatest squad of players, but we're moving in the right direction?
I think we still have the same problems that we ended the season with. We need a new goalkeeper, we need a new striker, and we need a holding midfielder. And here we are, like the first week in August, and we haven't purchased any of them yet. I am excited about the two players we brought in. We could clearly see last night we're a hell of a lot more exciting going forward. Paul had said earlier on, last year was just very stagnant. It was the same every week, the same type of movement. Last night was, especially the first 20, 25 minutes, it was very, very different. We looked exciting, we were exciting to watch. And then Mbeumo went off at halftime, and I won't say it reverted back to last season the way we were playing, but it certainly dropped down a level. We need to get our striker situation sorted. But for me, I think the key area that we really, really need to get going is a goalkeeper. And whether that's we bring someone in just to tide us over until next season. But my fear is that no matter who we sign, if we still go into the season with Onana as our number one, the whole defense is just so shaky with him behind him. They really are, and that's our biggest problem. And we haven't seemed to address that at all. And there is goalkeepers out there that we could bring in. We're not asking to bring in a world beater. We don't have that 60, 70 million spare for a goalkeeper. But I know we're championing for a striker, but for me, our biggest problem is a goalkeeper. It really is. It all falls apart, you know. Fergie said you win games with strikers, but you win titles with a good defense. And we just don't have one with Onana. I think our defense is pretty solid. I like the players that we have in there. I like De Ligt. I like Euro. But they're just still very shaky with Onana playing in behind them. They really are. And although he hasn't played any pre-seasons, we know what we're going to get from him. We really need to address that. But sorry, going back to the game, like I said, the first 20, 25 minutes, we looked a different team going forward, really do. And that's why I think a goalkeeper is more important than going out and spending 70, 80 million on a striker. Like you said, Wayne, we've got Fernandes, we've got Mbeumo, we've got Cunha, we've got numerous players that can score. Our biggest problem is our goalkeeper, and until we address that, I just fear going into this season. But like I said, first 20, 25 minutes, but pre-season, so I'm not going to count all my chickens just yet. So.
Dan says spot on a goalkeeper is crucial. Some couple of good saves actually from Bayindir yesterday, although I think that one of them was after the offside whistle had gone on, didn't it? But it was still a good reaction. You see that. Giles says midfield should be the priority. It's much better going forward, but in transition, we look very open. Forget the number 9 for now and go and get Carlos Baleba. You know, the Brighton player who feels like he could be available for the right price. The only problem is with Brighton what the right price is for United, considering Chelsea's track record of just giving them 50 million for whatever. It's not a good starting argument for United, is it? Anyway, so a couple of good interviews with Ruben Amorim. He did the press racket over the weekend before the last game.
Loves an interview.
What's that?
I say he loves an interview. There's Ruben.
He packed in 6 or 7, didn't he? We did round tables with a few. Well, round tables, sitting on a seat across from a few people. One that's definitely worth checking out is with Charlotte Dunker in the Times. The other one, ESPN's Rob Dawson, where he said that he's confident of the club being in a situation at some point under his stewardship, I presume, where they've got the structure in place to win the Premier League and Champions League, and that he wants to stay at United for 20 years. Dave, I'll come to you first on this one. You probably had doubts of him lasting 20 days into this season. So do you feel 20 years is a bit up to... Do you feel... I mean, you can't argue with the sentiment of what he's saying. Right? I mean, that's what you want someone to say.
I think rival supporters were more happier to hear that than our own supporters, that he wants to stay around for 20 years. I'm not sure, joking aside, I'm not sure any manager lasts in the double digits these days, But, I mean, it's all well and good coming out and saying that. But, also in, a similar interview, he said he's very happy with the squad that he has going into the season, which is concerning. It really is. I just, I don't know whether, like I said, even being successful, do managers even last that long these days? They want to move on. They want to do other things. It's not like in the Wenger Ferguson days where, they build legacy after legacy. I have deep concerns about Amorim. I really don't. I don't think he's the man that's going to move us forward. I can't see him lasting, like I said, 20 weeks into the season. If we start the season the way we ended, it could be a disaster. He's coming out and he is great for the old sound bites and the positivity. His speech at the end of last season on the pitch at Old Trafford, the good times are ahead. And now, when he's talking in interviews a couple of weeks back, he said that, there's going to be more pain. Now, you can interpret that in a couple of different ways. But to me, it was something that he didn't need to say. And also, this comment that he keeps making over the past few days about, the team as a structure, the team as one is very happy to be together. I'm glad to hear that. I'll be honest with you, because I think he's basically calling out the players that he's moved on, the players that are not part of the squad. I think that is a good sign that he is, being ruthless. And we have had ruthless managers down the years, but he seems to be a little bit more ruthless in that fact that he's just dismissed these players, and some of them are really good players. He's dismissed them. It may cause us problems overall when it comes to transfer fees, but you got to put your foot down at some stage, and I will give him that kudos for that. But just for me, I just he should spend less time in interviews and more time on the training pitch.
What do you make, Paul? I mean, it's a big statement, to say that the structure's in place, right? So that he feels confident that the club can deliver it. I mean, he's not saying that can happen now. What he's saying is that the processes that are in place are there. That the measures that have been taken in this year or so have been necessary to put us on the right path to what he believes can be a sound footing to deliver that kind of success, which is what we expect of a club from United. Obviously he's going to come out and says he wants to stay there for 20 years. Wouldn't we all like to do that? But the salient point being that he's confident that the club can win Premier League and Champions League, and I think that rather than put a timeline on it, to say that he's confident that can happen under his stewardship gives you some idea of the kind of projection that they're expecting. You can't stagnate over that period. You can't go backwards. It's got to be progression, and it's got to be quite rapid in order to achieve that. Do you think he's being realistic, or do you think it's just kind of like pre-season hype talk?
Given today's world and where we are with things and the controlling factor, I wonder how much is that is him, and how much is that is the other people above him telling him how to address a situation. The middle people between the owners, I think you call them, the directors of football, that in between, telling him how he should put things across of what they're looking, to say, looking to cover themselves. Becoming a bit, like the blame game. Now, I don't believe he's coming out and really saying what he believes. I think he's having to say that because he has to justify himself to his paymasters. And obviously he has to say the right things in a way because he can't afford to lose any more players. He's made his mind up about a certain few and he can't afford to lose any more. I mean, can he come out and go out and say, I need a centre forward when everyone knows he does? He can't say it, but everyone knows he does, because if he doesn't get a centre forward, he can't afford Højlund to drop any more emotionally, mentally than where he is at this moment in time, given that performance last season. So he has to play a game. And I'm sure that Sir Alex was in exactly the same position in the latter part of his time, because we all know that he managed the club up until it was sold on. Everything was through him because he was trusted. He hasn't got that, of course. So I am concerned. It's blatantly obvious what is needed. I was going to mention it, but I thought I'd end up rambling on too long. But I was always going to mention the goalkeeper, because the goalkeeping situation for Manchester United is a joke. And the one thing Dave mentioned about the defence, the defence will always be better if they got someone behind them who they actually believe is a goalkeeper and is going to get them out of jail when they make a mistake. There isn't that belief with that goalkeeper. It's as simple as that. So if you haven't got the belief for those 3, 4 or 5 people in front of you, you have got a big problem with those players, because they're worried about things. They end up dropping deeper and not doing their job when your team's got the ball, because they're scared of getting caught in behind this goalkeeper. And then when they're playing at the back, do they go into the areas they want to, feeling confident that he's going to get the ball to him? Because you've got to remember, this time last year we had those few words from him. Didn't he come out and say words to the effect, I'm going to play the margins even tighter with his passing from the back? And you think, and when he said that, straight away there was a lot of people who were looking for a cliff to jump off. And then we saw his performance last season. We saw the goals he conceded, and there was a lot of them was down to him. We can turn around and complain about people in front of him who have allowed that shot to get off. But when it comes down to the shot, you look at his positioning, you look at what happens with his hands, and it's a massive problem. The manager knows a goalkeeper's needed, but he can't say it because of the fact he's still got a goalkeeper there. And if he doesn't get if he doesn't get the belief from them that they're going to get one, he can't come out and start saying he wants one, because he might end up with a goalkeeper who knows that he's not wanted. As much as he reads it in the press, he's not seen any quotes or anything from the manager to suggest that. And one of the other points is that he's not played any pre-season games. Is he going to start the first?
He is injured. So
yeah. So if he suddenly becomes fit, does he start the first game of the season without playing any warm-up games? Because the one thing about goalkeepers, as we know, they need games without a shadow of a doubt, especially the first game of the season. You don't suddenly go, bring him in when he hasn't done it. Doesn't matter who he is. He needs to get those hands going, especially him. He needs to get those hands going badly. So it's as simple as that. So the manager, going back to where we started from, is saying all the things that is expected of him. And Dave mentioned about his interviews. As we've seen, Dave, and I saw it for the first time last night, I'm seeing players come off the pitch and they're interviewing them. I'm seeing managers being interviewed before the game pitch. I'm seeing managers being interviewed everywhere. It's a thing now. And the whole process, this whole American thing says everything to where we're trying to go. Yeah. It's as simple as that. So he's got no choice. It's all there in contracts, to be perfectly honest. It needs a manager to revolt, and then then it will change again.
Paul, on some things that don't change are players' ambitions, and you were once in the same position as some of the top players that are available this summer. You've got so I'm putting the ball in your court here. Let's say that you're a top-level player, you're an elite level, as you were in 91. You're a player who can make the difference between a team winning the title or not, or you can contribute towards that in a major way. And you were coveted by all the top clubs in the country. Are you convinced enough? If you were a player now looking at the next 2 years at United, I'm not saying that you wouldn't go to United. Of course, you talked about the size of the club and everything like that. But I'm talking about the prospects of the club within the next 2 years. You look at the way that Liverpool have made moves and seriously, they're going to, and realistically, they're going to be the favourites for next season. City is spending money. They're going to be among the contenders. Arsenal and Chelsea will be there as well. Spurs have spent a lot on the back of that Europa League win. Would you look at United as a serious prospect in the next 2 years and say, this is where I want to invest the next 2 years of my career if I want to win major trophies at the end of it?
The thing about this is me talking, and the people going, oh, but the game's changed. And of course it's changed. But the one thing that hasn't changed is still my opinion about Manchester United and about football. It will never change. I look at the football club. He used it, Embuano, whatever, we still need to find out exactly what it is. He come out and he used, in an interview, I think he used the word project 4 or 5 times. And all I was doing, I was going to play football. The moment if I'd have heard that word project, I'd thought, no, I'm here to play football. I'm not in the classroom. Project means school, a work ethic, it's a civil service or something like that. I joined Manchester United because of the club it was, not because I looked 2 years down the road and thought, oh, we can do this and do that. I joined United because of what it was and everything, the things that that my dad used to say, and all of a sudden the players who were there, and it was in your face in your FA Cup finals. Now, there was this big thing going on. It was driving me mad. And then the moment Paul Merson said it, and it just really capped it, and everyone keeps saying it. They're using this, he wants Champions League football like it's a handbag. It's the must-have handbag because of Champions League football. If you're lucky now, this year, it gives you 8 games in a season. So the media now sold this narrative now that a player's going to turn the club down because he's getting no Champions League football. And if they don't like the club, as it's Manchester United, they go, there's no European football. You can't go there. That's nothing. So they're virtually saying, well, because you're nothing, you're not allowed to try and grow to come back into it. So you're never going to grow again because you're not going to get any players of any note. So you can kind of just grow again, flourish. They want to bin you because you've got no European football. And it's a load of twaddle. And you got all they line up these people on TV, go on, and they say to them, go on TV and try and say Manchester United are finished, no Champions League football. Any player they're not going to get him because he's going to go and choose, i.e. the team at the moment, he's going to, so-and-so is going to choose Newcastle over Manchester United because they're in Champions League. There's no guarantee that Newcastle in 3 years' time are going to qualify for the Champions League in 3 years. No guarantee. But there's always that chance, more chance of United being in a Champions League in 3 years' time. But they're trying to virtually say, no, they're not going to be there. So the long and short of it is I joined United for what it could have been. There was something there. And then after a while, you suddenly realise that if you go and achieve something and things start to grow, you suddenly find out how louder those drums get. Everything gets louder and louder until that time that beat's going. And all of a sudden you say to yourself, I need to keep hearing this every single day of my life. And everything that goes with it. Even when you lose a game, even when you miss, there's always those people behind you to catch you when you're falling. And that's what Manchester United are to then playing for any other club in Europe. Are they saying that Manchester United, don't go to Manchester United, go to Nottingham Forest because Nottingham Forest are in Europa League? You know, go there because they're not, Europe doesn't, Europe. Why are we making Europe this do or die scenario? Because at the end of the day, in life, you want to be strong at home. Mm-hmm. Home is your strength. Home is important to be the best at home. So they're making Europe this new handbag you must have and be involved in it. Otherwise, you're nothing. It's great though, isn't it? What a way to demean, the vast majority of your own domestic league by saying you're nothing because you're not in Europe. It sums up what this league is doing to the rest of the countries, other leagues.
And itself.
Yeah.
Without actually realizing that. It's an interesting one. I agree with everything you said there, Paul. So the point is that 25-year-old Paul Parker on the market still picks Manchester United if they're interested.
Oh, 100%. But I'm more open to it now. And I'm looking down at it now, and I'm going, go to Manchester United if you've got balls, if you're brave, and you're in it because ambition wise, and you want to know that you've gone to one of the biggest clubs in the country, knowing that if you go there and achieve and you win a league title, it is bigger than any other side winning a league title. No other side can win a league title, and it goes on and on and on. We've suddenly all forgotten who's won the last league title. We've forgotten about that. No one's talking about it. All everyone's talking at this moment in time is still Manchester United.
Yep.
It's still Manchester United. And that's not me saying it because I played for them and trying to, massage my own ego or the club. It's about the fact of what the club means to the media. And that's what it's about. We know the media's love of Liverpool, but the other side of it is that Manchester United is still the biggest story. So that's the reason why any player of any ambition, and Mbeumo's the one, he'll go to Spurs because his manager's gone there from Brentford. Well, he was willing to leave when the manager was still at Brentford, not mentioned with Spurs, he was still talking about coming to Manchester United. So that was a Paul Merson shout, by the way. And it just absolute rubbish. And now I kept saying everyone around, I said, listen, he's a Cameroon international. He plays for Brentford. I said, you imagine him going back to Cameroon to play an international game, and he's a Manchester United player. He has lifted another level. Cameroon and Manchester United. Give it when he retires. 10 years after he retires, he could be actually fighting to be the Prime Minister. That's the difference.
That's true.
Well, that's exactly. It's there. I mean, at the end of the day, this is me going a little bit off it. I go and live in Singapore, and people say to me, how'd you get here in Singapore? Because people normally come out here with companies and this. I got into Singapore when I went and get my working visa to go and work out there because it had Paul Parker, Manchester United and England. I think Paul Parker, England and someone else doesn't really cut it. And I didn't have enough there really points wise to get it. And the same happened when I got a residency in Australia as well. It made a big difference. I got told that when I went to the workplace in Australia. It made such a difference to him. It added more points off the back of it. And that's the difference with that football club. And that's why Bueno should be, and hopefully he'll be accepted and given that little bit more time, because everyone was trying to push him to Tottenham and Newcastle. Everyone. You don't want to go there. Europe. Why do you want to go? You think yourself, you've got to remember, what if they do go somewhere? What if they do? No one can actually stop it. It's absolutely impossible to stop Manchester United once they start rolling.
Yeah.
And you want to be there.
Well, before you tell everyone all the stories from your autobiography, Paul, it should be a good time to tell people that you've actually got one coming out. So for everyone who's watching this, anyone who's listening back, the description, the links in the description for Paul's autobiography, Tackling the Game, which is published in September, so 5 or 6 weeks' time. We can get signed copies as well. The links in the description for them. Paul, I've heard it's a good read. Why now for a book?
Why, sorry?
Why now for a second book?
Well, I'll be honest, you got a bit aggressive and you put me behind me back, Wayne. To be perfectly honest, it was all about you. So I thought I'd better go with it if I want to sit here and work with this great man, Dave, to be honest. Because you might bomb me out, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, that was it.
In answer to your question, I don't think I can really answer it. Why? I think something was put to me by somebody, and I just we were just chatting to someone. I just said, "Oh, someone's asked me to do a book," and I think it was you kind of said, "Well, why not me?" or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it was said to me before, and then I didn't pay really much attention. I thought myself the fuss I had to, when I'd done my previous book many moons ago, I thought, what, I can't be bothered doing that. But then when you said it, and then because of over the years we've been talking and we've done a lot of other stuff before, you had an absolute incredible base of work already done. You had more finer details in your base than what the original booklet went out. There's more in there, and we've said more to each other on and off covers, on and off the camera anyway. So hell of a lot about me and my football. So it just kind of just made sense really in that way to go and do it, and especially go and do it with yourself, Wayne, really. And I just hope that when people read it, they actually understand and get an idea of that generation that I played in, how we were compared to the generation now, because there's a massive difference in what we were as individuals and what we were collectively together, because we virtually lived in each other's pockets, so we knew each other inside and out. And even now, I just spent 2 weeks with Chocky and Mickey Phelan in Thailand, and then Sharpie was living out there at that time. Now Sharpie's back, but Sharpie had been out in Thailand, been out there for 12 months after coming away from Alicante. So then Sharpie comes in for an afternoon, but we'd just go back. We had the three of us, and it was just like we was in the minibuses traveling around doing little events here and there. And you're just sitting on a bus, and all of a sudden you're just sitting there, and all of a sudden you go back 20 odd years, and you start just remembering things about what you go back, and then you look at Chocky and you think about this and that, and then you look at Chocky again. He looks like he's just jumped out of the jungle, and he looks like one of those little. Do you remember the little things, gonk? The gonks with the long hair. You used to hang them up everywhere. Bodies were that big, but the hair was that long. But and it's just one of those bits you get a little bit kind of small, a little bit emotional, because you think about when you were younger, when you was all together in that dressing room, and then you get Sharpie in. So Sharpie comes in one afternoon. We'd been out because we was at that given point, we was Wahin. So there was a little mini football tournament going on. So we was going out as guests there, watching it, interacting with the kids and stuff. So we come back to the hotel, and we're just sitting there in our kit, which they're giving us to wear. And we're sitting there had a bit of lunch and that with the wives, partners, whatever you want to say. And Sharpie comes in, and we just sit back, and then it's just the lads. Then the girls joined after about an hour, and then we spent about 4 hours, and we had an event on that evening, and we're still sitting out there, and all there was just bottles of beer everywhere, just where we're just sitting back, where you know, we all know, because we're all kind of going, well, we can't stay with Sharpie too long. But I'm kind of saying, well, Sharpie's made an effort. We can't get him here and say, well, we're going to go in an hour. So we end up 3-4 hours. And we didn't miss, but we missed the start of the evening, because we were sitting with someone who people we hadn't seen for a while. And I'm hoping this season that there's going to be a lot more of those events for me to come to Manchester, to be able to go and just to see him, because it wakes you up. It absolutely just gets you going again on that side. So going back to where we started from, that's what I feel. Everything, the way I feel, I hope comes out in the book.
Yeah. Dave's just dropped out for a second. Let me just make sure that.
I think Dave might have. Have you given him an early copy? Has he gone to read it?
Yeah, something like that. Let me just send him a message to come back in. Make sure that he gets that right. No, one of the things that I really enjoyed about working, first of all, like I've said so many times, like, you're a hero of mine, and in part of my favourite team growing up, the 93-94 side, which is just was incredible to watch. But one of the things that I really found interesting about working with you on this book, in a different way, I'm adding Dave back into the stage here, even though it's saying that he's not here. I'll just no, I'll give him a chance. They do have a storm out there. It is making its way over to the UK, so this is probably the first indication of that happening. Hope Dave's all right, doesn't get whisked off to the land of Oz or anything like that. Oh, he's back. He's not in the land of Oz. He's in the land of Ireland.
Electricity went.
So yeah, apart from the nostalgia rush I had from working with one of my heroes, as I do every Monday morning with you, Paul, is the fact that it's the most perhaps the most honest that I've seen. From, like, you kind of self-deprecating, and not in a kind of way that people put themselves down. It's really kind of like, this is where I am, this is where I was, this is my limitations, these are the things that I did wrong, these are the things that I didn't like about myself along the way. And there's a lot more of that than anything. Sammy McIlroy was a little bit like that, but I think you were even more like that. It's kind of like, this is where I was, and I understand my position, and I'm not inflating my sense of importance. And I think because of that, it makes it feel like, I'm not saying that it makes it feel like you could be there, but I think when you're a supporter and you understand, not everyone can play for United, or you dream of it. But for someone in a human way to understand, say, all right, well, these are the things that I'm not, like sometimes you say, like, oh, I should have said this, I should have done that, you know what I mean? And it's not kind of like the kind of, everyone's regretful in hindsight that works out for them, but I think you say it in more of a way that's right, and that's a little bit different. And we talked about this, about being your attitude in kind of like, this is a human thing, it's not really a football thing, but more in like the fact that you'd gone away to Australia, to Singapore, and you'd seen the world through a wider lens, and it makes you more appreciative of the vastness of the human experience. And I think that's something that really comes across. I think maybe that's another reason why you wanted to do it, right? Because you step out and then you step back in, you're looking through a different lens, so you think, oh, maybe I've got something different to say, a different way of saying the things I already said. I know, that's just my interpretation. That's one of the things I really enjoyed about working on that. Dave, you've probably got a bit of that. You went over to America for a bit, you come back to Ireland once the Orange Man became president again. You escaped there, so I mean, it's a point, isn't it? Right? Your experience of the world. I'm not saying you have to go abroad in a proper way to do that, but it does shape the way that you see the world when you go and actually go out and see it, rather than just sit in your own four walls.
Yeah, it definitely does. I missed the first part of that one because my internet keeps cutting in and out because the electricity is gone because of a storm. But yeah, now I'm unfortunately I can't answer the question because I didn't hear the first part of it.
That's good. That's no problem. That's the most sense that Dave Murphy has ever spoken. No,
and will all season.
Will all season. I was speaking about the human experience of going abroad and visiting different places and living in different places, and how it can shape your perspective of life and humans from the aspect of being Paul's book, or Paul's story, really, not his book, his life of going abroad and seeing things and then coming back and seeing things through a different perspective and being able to sort of like, when you see yourself really in a different kind of way, you can see the faults or you can see the decisions that you've taken, and you see it from a human line of going, right, okay, we all have our selfish way of doing and being. But then when you can see the effects of that, or you can see, oh, this is the impact of my decision, I think you can only really truly appreciate that when you've gone and seen different cultures and been around different cultures and the people's different way of doing life in a day-to-day thing, and you're kind of forced to realign into that in order to operate. Your consciousness of the way that you behave is so much different.
100%, and not to get too deep about that topic, but people that seem to have a very narrow view of the world are people that haven't even traveled. Like you said, I lived in the US for a very long time. I've been to a lot of places around the US, and now that I'm back around Europe, and it definitely puts a different view on everything. Our cities are no different, I believe, than a lot of the cities in the world. But if you don't travel, you don't know that, and you have a completely narrow view of how the world is and what it looks like. So for me and for us, living in the US for 15 years, definitely now that we're back, we actually seem to enjoy living here more so than before we moved out there, because it does give you a different perspective. It's different cultures, different ways. The US was a great place to live. My opinion has changed on that over the past few years, for obvious reasons. But yeah, gives you a whole different view of the world. And I've been to many places. I've been out to Asia. I've been all around Europe. Like I said, I lived in the US for 15 years. It gives you a completely different view on life. And the one thing I will say is to go back to is that, as Paul had said earlier on, in this whole, and it was a great way of putting it, with Mbumo, Manchester United, everywhere you go on the planet, everyone's heard of Manchester United. I don't think I've ever been to any country where I haven't seen something associated with Manchester United, where it's a kid in the street wearing a jersey, whether it's, flags out or whatever. But it was great the way Paul put it, in the fact that he said in 10 years' time, Boomer could run for president of Cameroon, and that is 100% true, and that's based off the fact that he played for Manchester United, not based off the fact that he played for Tottenham, or that he played for Newcastle, or that he played for Nottingham Forest. It's based off the fact that he played for Manchester United, and we've seen the dribble that some of these commentators have come out with over the past couple of weeks. They're sat down and they're told, we need our numbers up, talk negative about Manchester United. I mean, Darren Ambrose was trying to convince people on TalkSport the other day that Newcastle United was bigger than Manchester United, and that's the place to go. It's farcical, absolutely farcical that they don't believe it. They really don't. They don't believe it. And I'm a fan of the new Champions League format. I know it has its own controversy, but the bottom line here is that the Premier League is the hardest league in the world to win. It really is. And it should be your top priority every season to win the Premier League. All these other competitions are cup competitions. They're knockout competitions. There's a handful of teams that can win them. But the Premier League is the hardest league in the world to win. And that's where the priority should always be. Not this thing about, I was never convinced that getting into the Champions League is what a player thinks about. Never convinced about that. Never. Some players think of the money, and whoever pays the most. And you know what? If that's what they want to do, that's what they want. It's a human element in that they want to be set up when they have to retire in their mid-30s, late 30s. They got to retire. I get it. But it's never about. For me, I don't believe. You think a player cares if Nottingham Forest are in the Europa League or the Conference League or whatever, in the Champions League? No, they don't. They really don't. It's Manchester United. Once that comes calling, it's a pull that's very, very hard to say no to.
Yeah.
There's one thing. Sorry, Dave. There's one thing that for me next season, which is the big thing is that Liverpool are now in that competition. It's up to Liverpool now to go and win it. Then they've got something to celebrate properly because they're in that competition for the reason because they won it. If you're Arsenal and everyone else, you've just been invited into it to go and earn money, because you cannot go around and say that you are champions of Europe because you wasn't a champion at home. So the whole thing is it's a myth tournament to me. And everyone knows that themselves, but they're selling a name. It's just a massive name, and it's a good thing to use during the off season when players are moving. People will get bored of it soon now. Keep hearing it over and Europe and you won't go there because of Europe, because it does my head and it drives me nuts. I've got no interest in all this transfer talk and these people, these so-called experts, and who know where players are going, because again. They know where players are going because all they're doing is shelling out maybe money to find things out to say, I told you first. Even one of them's just recently been found out about things, just what's going on the last few days. So it's just embarrassing. It's amazing though, again, when you look at it, was this massive rivalry in football now between Manchester United and Newcastle.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. It's come this big rivalry. That big tie at St. James's, and they're going to be there going on because at the end of it, these players, and Bueno mostly get booed because he didn't sign for them. It's just absolutely amazing how everything's being pushed to try and create rivalry again. Rivalries are made. They're cultured. It's just, you can't just suddenly just go out and make one, which they seem to be trying to do.
Newcastle have definitely done that over the years, haven't they? For sure. While we're talking about books, just a quick one. If anyone can share this podcast, there's 600 of you listening to it. I'm going to be picking someone to give a copy of this to. Jimmy Murphy, man who kept the red flag flying. The biography of Jimmy Murphy, authorised by his family. So, and I'll be sharing the links to this after the pod. So if you share that, I'll be picking a winner for that later today. Obviously, subscribe and like if you're watching as well. No, I think the points you're making about Mbeumo are great, because really the point is that United's still a bigger shop window than the Champions League. I think the numbers may not back that up. That's just my belief. No one can come around and tell me that I'm technically wrong, because it's just an opinion. So don't come back at me with facts if it turns out to be the Champions League gets 10 times as many views overall than United. I mean, I'm talking respectively, of course, the view of United playing in the Champions League, or the view of Arsenal playing in the Champions League, or United playing in the Premier League against Spurs playing in the Champions League, or whatever like that. The interest of Newcastle being in the Champions League rather than the Champions League itself, of course. Let's talk about Mbeumo and Cunha and Sesko as well, the players that United are interested in, or at least Sesko seems to be the big target. They haven't put an official bid in for him. Paul, everyone can see that United need to do much more transfer activity. That's what some of these comments are coming in and saying as well. But on the action that they have done, the players that they've brought in, the key thing, I think, for me, and it's just an observation based on the transfer activity of the last 10 years, much of which we've spent talking about, is the fact that this time round, what we've gone and done is we've bought players with Premier League experience. So they're not coming in and like, we have to adapt or anything. They've been in the league for a couple of years, in Cunha's case, longer than that in Mbeumo's case. They've been around the division. All right, Mbeumo isn't, he hasn't played naturally that inside forward right position, but he's got the capabilities to do that more than, let's say, Garnacho or Antony or other players have. Whether or not he does well, that's on the manager. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that we've gone out and we've spent big on a couple of players who are 2 players that any squad outside of the top 6 would want. Pretty much every team in the top 6 would like to have in the squad. Definitely strengthening United from where they were, Cunha, without a shadow of a doubt. I'd still say there's a little bit of a question mark. You'll shoot me down straight away with this, hopefully, but that's the point of the question. Is it that much a step up from the likes of the ceilings that we've seen from the likes of Rashford and Garnacho? Because we know that they're capable of scoring in major finals. We know that they're capable of winning major trophies for United. Cunha's still got to step in and deliver that, right? So we're still investing in potential to do that. You know, is their ceiling, is their standard, is their level of consistency that much greater that United have had to take these steps?
There's definitely more guarantee with these two players. Definitely with Cunha as well, because the Wolves. I mean, you watched him at Wolves, and the Wolves fans loved him.
Yeah,
because he had a work ethic. Same when Bueno, he had a work ethic, and he was, he was adored at Brentford. I saw him play there quite a few times. I watch Brentford quite a bit, so when I'm working, so. Ironically, I'm doing a game, one of the early games this season. In August, I'm doing one of their games when they play Villa. So it'd be interesting to see how different they are, how they play under Keith Andrews. So I've seen him a lot. I've seen him in the lower bits of Brentford when there was really fighting to make a living. And he come through that. And some of the great players we've had at any level of Football League counted as well, because there was another league before the Premier League. I'd like to remind you, in case you had forgotten.
I'm old enough to remember, Paul.
Some great players have come out of that. Some great players come out of the old second division into the first division and become all-time greats in the game.
Yeah.
And then what they'd done was virtually done their apprenticeship. They knew about where they'd been and how they had to trudge up and down on battle-worn pitches and everything to get through to reach the top. And I think Mbueno's one of them. He's thankful for where he is, and that's the reason why he made the decision to come. He wanted to prove himself. And they're 2 players that the manager can walk out on the pitch and just look at those 2, and because we know the rest of them. He knows exactly the one thing that they are going to do and what he's not going to have to do. He knows those 2 players are going to be working hard to get on the ball, to get back and do everything. The one thing he knows himself as a manager, he hasn't got to ask them to run back.
Yeah.
And that is a big difference. You can play badly. You can do anything. You can play bad. Anything that's wrong in football, you can go and do it for 90 minutes. But not that work ethic is something that you should never have to ask from any player, because he should want to do it for himself and do it for his teammates. And those the 2 that you mentioned didn't play that way. And we can talk about they did it in finals and all this. At a moment in time, United aren't good enough to make finals, judging by last season. They've got to start again now, new hymn sheet. But he knows that there's more chance of getting to a final with those 2 rather than with the other 2, because every game has to be taken in a different way because of those 2 individuals. He was virtually, should I soft soap them or should I go hard? Shouldn't be that way as a manager, should it? You shouldn't be having to worry about players and think, oh, should I be nice to him because he doesn't look happy. He's mostly had something bad's happened. He's not enjoyed himself. So I've got to soft soap him for the next game to make sure he's right. Oh, he's not playing that well. He's a bit upset and, he's giving the ball away again, but I don't want to take him off because it will cause controversy. We get all the media stuff. Why should a manager have that? Go and get people you can rely on. That's how you build a team. And then at such point, when you can go out and get your showboaters and you can still go and find the right one, it doesn't need trained chimps, directors of football, to go out and find the right one. You need someone who knows players' mentality of these showboaters and still know that they've got a team bit in their heads, and you add them to that work ethic. And if you look at it and you look at the teams that I played in at United, work ethic was first, without a shadow of a doubt. And then once that you've done the hard work, and then the other side of it comes out. But you have to do that hard work first to progress. And those 2 definitely fit the way that that what he wants to play. Everything I've read about him, I've never done it for a United manager before until this fella came in. I wasn't interested. I knew most of them, but I wasn't really interested in wherever they'd been before or what. But I was interested just reading about all the different bits people have said about him from when he was in Portugal and when he was at Braga as a player and when he was a manager. And it just, everything about him, for me, gives him a little bit more longevity because of that. It's a good, honestly, Dave, if you could go and read up about him, about his life as a player, and when he first started at Braga, then to Sporting, honestly, you'd give him that little bit more. And that's why I've got time for him, because he's had to work hard to get to where he is. It's just a shame that the people at the football club ruined last season for him, to be perfectly honest. But the man deserves a really good go at this if he can get what he wants.
Dave's teachers had 5 years at educating him. If you're not going to get through to him. 6 because he was held back here. Dave. I'm only joking. Dave, the point about the players that we brought in. I'll get to your favourite subjects of goalkeepers in a minute when we talk about David De Gea's return. But on the players that United have brought in, Cunha and Mbeumo, for all the reasons that Paul's literally just said, how many players do you need with that kind of ethic? You don't need to buy like 10 who come in like that. You need to buy enough that rub off on the rest of everyone else to make it a mentality that's around the rest of the squad, right? And I think that's the real. I mean, the quality is there. They're really good. They're really good movers with the ball. I think they're a lot sturdier on the ball than what Garnacho and Rashford have been. It's time for Garnacho to develop into that, of course, but they bring something a little bit different as well. And Mbeumo's obviously got that left side, so it frees up the room for Ahmad. Last night looked like Mbeumo was playing forward and Ahmad was on the more defensive position, which I think is great for both of them. I think that's where they should both be. So all those kind of things are square pegs in square holes, which is really nice, doing the things that we want them to do. Are you impressed by the players that we've brought in? I know we need to bring more, but from the players that we brought in, are you happy with the business that we've done?
Oh, definitely 100%. I think the 2 new signings have been fantastic additions. I always look for 2 things, and like most supporters do, when a player signs for Manchester United, and the 2 questions that have to be asked is, can they cope with the pressure of playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world? I think that's the first and foremost that has to be assessed. And the second one, just below that, is can they manage the Premier League, which is the toughest league in the world? And we, bigger and better players, no disrespect to 2 we've signed, have come to the Premier League and absolutely bombed, because it's just a completely different beast. The great thing about these 2 signings is we know the answer to one of them, and that is yes, they can cope with the Premier League. They're 2 very, very smart signings. We would have to go back a long way to even, well, I would anyway, to think of any player that we've signed that had Premier League experience has bombed. I mean, we've been really, really lucky with the players we've had, like Van Persie, Berbatov, Cole, York. It's been one of those things whereby if they come with that experience already, they're halfway there. It's just now the pressure of playing for the biggest club in the world. That's the only question that has to be answered. But I looked at Cunha last year, and I thought he was a bit of an ass, because he just wanted to win all the time. And maybe it's because he was playing for a different team. I was like, he has a bit of an attitude on him, But I think that's going to help him at Manchester United, because everyone and anyone wants to have a go at the club right now, and they have since 2013. And even in the Fergie years, someone was constantly trying to have a go at United. But I've been really impressed with the 2 signings. And like I said, they're halfway there to being a success. All they have to do now is be able to manage playing for the biggest club in the world, that pressure and that stress, and that will tell over the next 5, 6, 7 months. But again, what helps you in that, I believe, is the fact that you can play in that league. Because coming to the Premier League and then having to adjust to a very large club, one follows the other. If your form is off and you're not playing well, then the pressure of the club becomes too much as well. I think these are 2 very, very intelligent and smart signings. and I was really, really impressed with them. I know we're out there looking at another striker, and we're going to talk about a goalkeeper. That brings, if we do end up buying someone from abroad, those two questions then will have to be answered. Whereas right now, there's only one question to be answered. And with these two signings and playing already familiar with the league, with the defenses and how the league works, is going to help them adjust to playing for the biggest club in the world. So, yeah, I'm really, really happy with the two signings we brought in.
Yeah. Tricked you there, Dave. I'm not going to talk about goalkeeper. Not in the way that you want to talk about anyway. What I'm going to talk about is the fact that David De Gea is coming back this week with Fiorentina for the last warm-up game of the season. Just a quick one to both of you, really, because I don't think there's much to talk about. Like, I think everyone would have, I say everyone on this podcast, the three of us, would have said keep David De Gea over the 2 years that we've seen. There is plenty who said just because, Onana's not the answer doesn't mean that De Gea should have been kept. I understand that. Great. Some people think that Onana is better than what De Gea was. Fair enough. I don't agree with that. However, the point being that he was released, his contract expired. He moved on to Fiorentina after a year. By the way, he didn't immediately find a club, and he's had a good year at Fiorentina, and they're coming back. Little bit disappointed that the club didn't see fit to try and arrange this as a testimonial for David. What do you think, Dave? Am I being overly sentimental? That I tend to be. Do you think that it's an opportunity missed?
I don't think there's any great love between David De Gea and Manchester United with how it ended, to be honest. So I don't think a testimonial was ever going to be on the cards for that. I think it's great that he comes back to get the opportunity to receive the applause and the appreciation by the supporters, because he deserves it. I think the club handled that terribly at the end. And I was one of those people that thought it was an absolute disaster to let David De Gea go at that time. I didn't think that position was a position we needed to spend a lot of money on. And here we are in the middle of a shit show we won't be able to offload this goalkeeper. David De Gea should still be the Manchester United number one. I really honestly believe that. In his last season, was there a couple of errors? Of course there was, but highlighted tenfold because he plays for Manchester United. That's all. Goalkeepers make mistakes. The difference is that even now, David De Gea took a year off to sit in the sun, came back, and he's an even better goalkeeper than the current one that we have. It's mind-blowing. But I don't think it was ever going to be a situation. Testimony is very romantic way of thinking, Wayne. But I think the fact that he gets to come back and get the applause that he truly, truly deserves is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, not every player who spends a decade at a club should get a testimonial. I understand that. Phil Jones famously said he didn't want one. I don't know if the offer was on the table for him to have one. But he said he didn't want one. I can understand why. It's a bit of criticism. It was the same. Luke Shaw. I can't imagine him taking one. Well, you never know. But in terms of David, you would have thought he's the stature to have got one and deserves one, right? I mean, whether or not this should have been turned into one.
He deserved one, and I was disappointed in the way the club let him go. I was disappointed in the way a lot of the fans suddenly started calling him out. They'd forgotten what he'd done in previous seasons, getting to United to finals.
Yeah,
he got them to that Europa League final, which they won. He was one who got them there. That game, I think, against, was it Young Boys at home? I think it was. There was a game, Young Boys at home. It was definitely a Swiss side. I didn't know if it was Young Boys or Basel. I think it's more Young Boys and Basel. We made incredible saves to keep them in it. When there was virtually, they could have gone out. But even prior to that, I just think he got better and better. And then we suddenly get these new age fans and started saying he's no good with his feet. It's like virtually, then straight away, it's like virtually saying like a chef, great cook, but he can't run around a kitchen quick enough. It's just absolutely madness how things work out. I mean, we've got a goalkeeper supposed to be great with his feet, but he keeps giving them the ball. He keeps giving them opportunities when he's got the ball to get caught on the ball. David De Gea knew his strengths. And he knew his limitations, and that was a difference. And that's what football's about. You know, goalkeepers. Yes, they win the games because they kick the ball out of the net. They don't. You don't sign a goalkeeper because he actually goes out and he makes goals for you. Goalkeeper. Oh, he's a great goalkeeper. He gets 10 assists a season. That's not a goalkeeper, then, is it? You know, you think yourself, no. So it was wrong what they done. They should be embarrassed, the people who allowed that to happen, given the current situation as well. So he'll come back and he'll have a little smile, and he'll get what he deserves from the fans. But there'll be a lot of them who are being totally two-faced.
Well, I loved him. I love him, David. Club legend. I think he fits the criteria for that. Won a fair few trophies, won league title, and played a great number of games as well. I think he's in the top 10 for appearances now as well. So I think he crept into that, didn't he? Great goalkeeper. I didn't really care too much about his feet. And like you said, I don't think this goalkeeper's been any improvement. I don't think we've seen any improvement since. With the passing, a couple of good passes, but I'm not saying that De Gea didn't ever make a couple of good passes. There was a video doing the rounds, wasn't there? He set up Cavani for a goal. He had a couple of assists in his time, David. Great goalkeeper and doing good things as well for Fiorentina. Still well loved at United. I think as a measure of someone how they adapt to United. I mean, he never really kicked off. When he was the best in the world for a number of years in his position, I would say maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer than that. And, you know, when the move to Real Madrid fell apart, he didn't kick off, he didn't demand a transfer or anything, he just stayed for it. All right, the money must have been nice, don't get me wrong, he was given that FD contract, but that was a result of what happened with Sanchez, and United were backed into a corner with that hoisted by their own petard, which is a phrase I've used twice this week. Usually get 2 uses of it a year for Wayne. Don't think it's a phrase in the public consciousness really to be used that often, but you know how odd I am. But yeah, I'll be glad to see him back and glad to see him get a reception. There might be some people, like I said, might be a bit critical, but most of the fans who are there to see him this week will be delighted to welcome him home and give him that testimonial feel that thing. But hopefully he'll be, even in a friendly, hopefully he'll be celebrating his comeback by picking the ball out of the net a few times, because we could do with a few goals to get us shaped up for the new season, and not penalties. You know, some goals from that open play would be nice, because you know we've seen a lot of good movement. It'd be nice to see someone of them put in the back of the net. But maybe we need someone to do that. Maybe that player will arrive this week, and that'll give us a good opportunity to talk about him next week, when we'll be back to talk about that, and hopefully talk about a new signing coming in the shape of Benjamin Sesko. If he decides to pick United over Newcastle, that'll be an entertaining conversation that we didn't have this week, although Paul did allude to it a few times. It's the choices you make in your life, right? Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching this week, guys. We'll be back next week to preview United versus Arsenal to kick off the Premier League season. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please like the video and subscribe to the podcast feed if you're listening as well. And also, like I said, links in the description there for Paul's book to pre-order on Amazon, to pre-order the signed copies that are up for a limited time only, UK addresses only at the moment, I'm afraid. That link's also in the description as well. We'll be back next week, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.